Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm Amber Israelson and thanks for sticking with me on this journey through prompt engineering. I think we can all agree that ChatGPT and GPT and generative AI and everything that goes with it is pretty exciting. Amazing, really. But I would be remiss if I didn't spend some time talking about the ethical considerations of all of this. So coming up in this module, I'll overview those considerations and then we'll talk about some of the strategies to address the concerns, at least from a prompt engineering perspective. So starting with the overview. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. There's probably a dozen more I could add to this, but here are some of the big ones. First is privacy. Generative AI can be used to generate personal and sensitive information and/or could be trained on data sets that include personal details. Think of applications in healthcare or financial services, for example. This could potentially lead to data and privacy breaches if it falls into the wrong hands. Misinformation and manipulation of data. Generative AI can be used to generate all kinds of things, images, data, deepfake voices, and more that are totally believable, even if they're just straight up false. And/or it could have been trained on false data. ChatGPT, for example, scrapes the internet for information, and we all know that the internet is full of things that are not totally correct. Bias and fairness. Once again, LLMs like ChatGPT are trained on massive amounts of data from the internet. And no surprise, there's biased data on the internet. This could be around things like race, gender, age, and a lot more. And if people or machines are using that output to make decisions, that could lead to potential discrimination or unfair outcomes. Ownership and copyright. Who owns the output of generative AI? Is it the developer, the operator, the AI itself, or the people who created the data that the AI was trained on? And what about the ownership or copyright of the data that it was trained on? How does all of that work? Next is the lack of transparency and explainability. Generative AI models are often referred to as black boxes because it's really hard to know how they generate their outputs. This lack of transparency can lead to ethical concerns because we just don't fully understand the implications of the technology or what it can do or is doing. And then finally, job displacement. This is top of mind for a lot of people. Will AI take my job? It's a valid concern and one that pops up every time there's a big technological shift. These are all really big concerns, and the solutions are going to require all of us, meaning society in general, you and me, governments and institutions. So I won't even pretend to have all the answers here, but from a prompt engineering perspective, we can play a small part. So let's talk about some strategies around that next.